This is The Guardian.
Hello, I'm Faye Carruthers and welcome to The Guardian Women's Football Weekly. Arsenal are champions of Europe. Against the odds, they've brought the Champions League trophy back to North London for the first time in 18 years. We'll analyse the game and the celebrations, plus we'll talk about what it means for the club going forward. We'll also hear from Adrian Jacob, head of World Sevens Football, to find out more about the new tournament and how it's been received. All that, plus we'll take your questions, and that's today's Guardian Women's Football Weekly. Now then, I have the most happy smiley, wonderfully adorned in red scarves and jumpers panel for you today. And we've already been discussing the fact that this is not going to be a neutral pod today. There's going to be all the love piled at Arsenal Football Club, quite rightly so. Suzy Wrack, can you now see behind the tears that you've shed for the past however many days?
I mean, no, and I'll probably cry during this at some point, given that I've cried periodically, whilst cooking dinner or doing the washing up or just, walking down the street. So yeah, high likelihood of tears at any point.
Tim's already admitted that he was crying last night as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I have several times and might happen again. Yeah, we recorded the Arsenal Women Arsecast last night and kind of went over it, and yeah, that got the feels going again, and I'm delighted to do this again because I just don't want this weekend to end, and this is an extension of it to help relive it again. So extra delighted to be here this morning.
Tim, it's just like birthday celebrations. Just keep them going for
Exactly.
as long as you want.
It was literally Tim's birthday yesterday as well.
Yeah.
Oh, happy birthday, Tim Stillman.
Thank you.
Sophie Downey, oh my goodness, what a weekend. And you were literally front and centre. You'd been in Lisbon for such a long time leading up to it as well. What an incredible achievement.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so lucky in my career to have witnessed several moments, and that's really, really one right at the top of it. I was saying my first Champions League game that I covered was Arsenal-Barcelona in 2012, October 2012. Everything was so different then, and then to be at the celebrations yesterday, I also shed a few tears because it was pretty emotional.
I wasn't in Lisbon, but I did shed a few tears watching on the television. It was, you can't love football if that doesn't make you feel emotional in any way, shape or form, that kind of achievement, especially because it was a little bit against the odds, as I said at the start. So the 18-year wait is over. Arsenal are champions of Europe once again. And as the final whistle blew in Lisbon on Saturday, Renée Slegers' side completed what was perhaps unthinkable. Not perhaps, it was unthinkable at the start of the season. Overcoming the Queens of Europe and arguably the best team in the world in recent years. It finished 1-0 to the Arsenal. Arsenal 1, Barcelona 0, thanks to a second-half goal from none other, after we predicted it last week, than substitute Stina Blackstenius. We did get an email in, Suzy, from Graham saying, can we just sit back and let Suzy bask in this brilliant result? I mean, yes, we can, without a doubt. For the two Arsenal lovers on the pod, how was the weekend for you? How are you analysing it now with 3 days in between it?
Oh, it's just brilliant. I mean, part of the magic of it was going into it with no expectations necessarily of what was going to happen. I was very much if we lose this game, I'm happy to take the participation awards. Reaching the final in and of itself for the first time in 18 years was a huge achievement, particularly given the start of the season, Renee coming in as interim and then being made permanent manager just 4 months prior. It's a phenomenal achievement just to have reached that, having beat Lyon the way they did, having come back in both games, in both the quarterfinals and the semi-finals before this. I was just happy to be there, and I don't know if that that kind of feeling perhaps contributed to the way the players were feeling. Maybe they were quite relaxed as well. There was literally nothing to lose really, and everything to be gained, and that just made it a really, really enjoyable weekend. There wasn't necessarily nerves or anything like that going into it. There was just excitement, and yeah, I keep running out of words to describe the way I felt during the match. When Ian Wright said on TV that he felt his heart do something weird that he had never felt before, I was like, he has just described what I have been struggling to put into words during that match. Because I think I turned to Sophie multiple times and said, my heart feels funny, I don't know what it's doing, like among the many things that I inflicted on Sophie in that match. But indescribable.
Can you describe it, Tim?
Yeah, my emotional journey for the match was pretty similar. I came in with quite low expectations, so not a lot of nerves. But once Arsenal got through that first 20 minutes, because I'll be honest, one of my benchmarks was I don't want what happened to Chelsea 4 years ago. Not saying that to have a dig at Chelsea, and to be honest, I'm not sure there'll be any Chelsea fans listening to this anyway. But because Barca can do that to anyone, and I just thought I just don't want it to be a washout. Compete and, compete as well as possible. And then once we got through that, I started to think, okay, this is actually quite an even game. This looks like a game between equals, and that made me more nervous as the game went on. And when we were kind of reliving it last night, there are lots of like mini turning points, like Steph Catley's block from the Bonmati shot, Caitlin Ford blocking a cross and celebrating it like a goal. I think there was a moment in the first half where Emily Fox was really boxed in, and she did the roadrunner on Claudia Pina and just burst past her. And I think these little moments just slightly shifted the mentality and made me shift mine a little bit. And then, after the goal, I don't mind admitting I was an emotional wreck. And when the final whistle went, it was Sophie who found me first, actually, because I think she could see I was in some trouble. And I think it was Emma from the BBC asked me, because she's being professional and typing her copy, and I think she was asking me about Stina Blackstenius' contract. And I think when I turned round and my face was bright red and covered in tears, I think she realised she'd made a mistake to ask me a logical question in that moment. And just an unbelievable day and an unbelievable evening out in Lisbon as well. Just one of the best weekends of my life, no doubt.
Oh, I saw all the celebrations. I have to say, I had massive FOMO. It looked brilliant. I know, Soph, that you were one of the few that actually thought Arsenal could go and do it. So you must feel pretty vindicated now.
Yeah, I had this weird feeling. I just had this feeling that there was something about this game that they would do something quite special. And I said it to Suzy, and I think Suzy laughed at me beforehand. I also said it to my wife Rachel. She also laughed at me. She was like, not going to happen. But I just think when you think about the story of the season, right, when you think about the comebacks, like Suzy said, when you think about, Renee Slegers and the whole Jonas Eidevall situation, football has this weird thing sometimes of like just producing magic and fairy tales when you least expect it, and it just kind of felt along that journey all the way along, all of the comebacks, all of the setbacks, that something special might happen. And yes, they were the underdogs, I'm not denying that, but I just had that weird feeling, and I was so calm going to the game, and I'm never calm going into games, whoever it is. I'm always a bit nervous. I was so calm until Stina Blackstenius scored, and then I was like, oh, like, this is becoming really real. This last 13 minutes is going to be hell. Poor Suzy next to me, I never normally do this, but when the 7 minutes went up for injury time, I started my stopwatch because I just couldn't, it was going to be way too long. And I think that sent Suzy over the edge. So I had to deal with her as a blubbering wreck next to me. But I think the first person I actually really wanted to go see was Tim. We've been on this journey this whole season. We've done every away leg, I think, together. And I know how much you put into this team and how much it means to you. So that's why I wanted to come and give you a little cuddle and celebrate with you.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And actually, we're consistent on this pod, because one of the last things you said to me, Suzy, when we previewed the game last week, when I said, are you going to be tactical with your voting in terms of, do you think Arsenal can do it? You went, I'm not even being tactical. They're just not going to win. Well, I mean, look, we are consistent on the Guardian Women's Football Weekly that our predictions are terrible.
I was stamping it down. I had a flame of hope, right? Like Sophie has explained some of the reasons why I had a flame of hope, but I had a flame of hope because, and this is no offence to Chelsea at all. I think they're a phenomenal team. I love speaking to their players. I love Sonia. I think she's incredible. Their achievement this season has been absolutely phenomenal. And I've taken some criticism for last week's pod in like people saying I've been too critical and not just celebrated enough of Chelsea. And I think that's analysis, right? It's because they've set the bar so high, anything but Champions League for them doesn't feel like enough. So I'm analysing in the sense of their own like bar that they have set themselves and how good they've been. So what they achieved was incredible, but there was just something about watching Arsenal play this season when they were at their best and watching Chelsea play this season. And I think that multiple times this season, Arsenal have played the better football.
Just not consistent. That's been the problem, hasn't it?
Just not consistency, held up by that, really, really bad start to the season as well. And Chelsea are dogged and they get the job done regardless of whether they're playing well or not. And I fear, because it was a season in transition for them, what they will look like next season when everything kicks into place and they start playing the beautiful way we know they can and have shown at times this season. But I think overall Arsenal played the better football when they were at their best, and so that had given me a flame of hope. But I wanted to stamp down on every flame of hope that cropped up in my field of vision because I needed to write on this game. And like I could not write like Sophie's timer sat next to me counting down those 7 minutes. I could not write an intro saying Arsenal were champions of Europe because the thought of having to delete it, and I've written this in a personal piece that hopefully goes up at some point, the thought of having to delete those words meant I did not give a shit about any deadline. Like I could not be the person writing Arsenal champions of Europe and then pressing that backspace key. I just could not do it. So like the copy had to wait. It had to wait until the final whistle, and I had like sobbed my heart out for a little bit first, and then I was like furiously typing to like try and get something out. My first hit was absolutely crap.
Can we just put an asterisk there? Sorry, Guardian editors.
But yeah, the first hit was absolutely crap, and the second one was much better though. The second one was much better. But yeah, what I thought was really funny was like Tim's right, that Chelsea Barcelona final. That's what I just didn't want us to go down early, and like Chelsea were really unlucky with that game. Those first 2 goals had a lot of misfortune in them. They were a better team than that, and so we knew that they can do things to very, very good teams. And I just like my hopes were so low that I was just leaning over to Soph, Johnny Lou, and Tom Gary like through the first 36 minutes of that match, going, "Well, Chelsea were 1-0 down at this point. Oh, Chelsea were 2-0 down at this point," until the 36th minute when I was like, the game was over. Chelsea were 4-0 down at this point, much to their amusement. But it wasn't like to slag off Chelsea. It was like a thank God we made it this long through Barcelona's incredible like pressure and play and beauty.
How exactly did they do it, Tim? Because we said on the pod last week that they had to be near on perfect if they were going to win it, and I think it's fair to say it wasn't necessarily the best Barcelona performance that we've seen, but how did Arsenal get the job done?
Yeah, there's a few things I've spoken to with coach and some of the players, probably just to give an insight into the preparation. I mean, first of all, they knew how important the first 20 minutes was, particularly because Arsenal were coming in off the back of a fortnight without a game, whereas Barcelona was still playing. And in the semi-final first leg against Lyon, Arsenal really struggled in the first 25 minutes. And I think they knew they do that against Barcelona, they are going to be 3-0 down. So the start of the game, they didn't play out from the back very much in that first 20 minutes because the message was very much, don't give them anything. And because I think they felt that once you get through that first 20 minutes, our confidence grows. Barcelona, perhaps they're used to being in a commanding lead by then. The other thing they did that Beth Mead told me was they were doing 11v11s in training. So Renee named the team early in the week. And what she did was set up an 11v11 situation where the subs had to be Barcelona in training. And so Beth was kind of saying, as disappointed as she was not to start, she had to be Caroline Graham Hansen in training. So she had to train like a beast, and they all did, because they had to make it as hard as possible for the starting 11. So that really raised everyone's level in training. But I think they got the preparation right as well in terms of after the WSL season, they just took things down a bit. The players had a couple of days off. And then the week building up to the game, they really went for it. And I think what impressed me most, aside from the tactical side of it, is just And I think this is because of the manager, how calm they were. So when the goal was disallowed, in my head, I'm going, oh, this is going to lift Barcelona now. It's lifted the crowd. We're in trouble the next 5 minutes. They dealt with it. When Arsenal scored, I thought, oh, here we go. Barcelona are going to throw everything. Now the next kind of 5 minutes is so key. And they just dealt with it. Like there was a serenity to this performance. And I think that is the biggest quality that Renee Slegers has brought to this team. She's brought a real, almost Serena-like serenity.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, actually, because you very rarely see her, angry on the touchline, animated on the touchline, and that clearly gets through to the players, with no disrespect to her predecessors, obviously, but they were very different. And actually, that then links into, Soph, the defensive side of the game, because you have to be calm up against a side like Barcelona when you've shipped 12 goals in your last 3 games, and then you're up against, the juggernaut that is Barcelona. You have to keep calm, and that was quite impressive, actually, I thought, the defensive side of their game.
I mean, it was so impressive, especially, as you mentioned there, the last 3 games where there were some real concerns about Arsenal's defence, and especially when they get hit on the transition and how they were coping with that. But I think every single one of that back line really stepped up. I think Leah Williamson had the game of probably her career in many respects. She was just getting onto everything. She was stepping in. She was getting tackles in the box when they came in. But I think and if I'm not wrong, Tim, correct me if I am, but I don't think any one of the back four made a single foul in the game, which is quite incredible when you're playing a Barcelona team as slick and quick and tiki-taka as they kind of are. So they were like completely on it with the game. I think the way that they did kind of restrict Barcelona in a lot of ways to shots from outside of the box as well. I know there were a few moments, Bonmati got in the first half. There was a Claudia Pina one in the second half in the box. But generally they were forcing them to shoot from distance, which is exactly kind of the playbook that you need when you're playing Barcelona. Force them wide and force them to shoot from distance. And I think the whole defensive effort, both from the 4 at the back, but also the midfielders and, the wingers who chased back, and Caitlin Ford, another one who had the game of her life, out of possession more than in possession. I think she was just constantly backtracking, getting her foot in, making herself a menace. And Johnny Liu next to me, I was sitting next to Johnny Liu from The Guardian, and he just kept saying, they're rattled. They've got in their faces and they've been rattled, and they're not used to being rattled. And I think that's the biggest key. They did get in defensive aspects. They got in their faces. They got those tackles in. Barcelona are not used to that, I don't think. So it immediately kind of set the tone for the game going forward.
Yeah, we'll talk about Barcelona in a second, but a word on Stina Blackstenius, Suzy, because she's not had the most consistent Arsenal career, but I mean, she's going to go down in history now, isn't she? Scoring the biggest goal in the last 18 years for the club. It was absolutely massive, and we teed it up, didn't we, last week as well, of all people to have come and scored that goal, but they needed her pace at that point when she came on, didn't they?
Yeah, I can't even think straight because Sophie's made me try and remember the hilarious analogy that Johnny Liu used about, didn't he say the West Wing, was it?
It was when CJ said, is being told to get in the president's face. Yeah. You have to get in the president's face. That's what Arsenal were doing to Barcelona.
But yeah, Stina, I mean, I just, you go through like so much pain watching her sometimes when, she's offside and she has so many opportunities and she doesn't take them. And she took so much flack when Viv Miedema left. Lots of people saying, she can't feel her shoes and things like that. But she steps up in the biggest of moments. And, I've literally got her Wikipedia page up in front of me. Her debut was her debut goal was against Manchester United. She scores in the Conti Cup final in 2023. She scores in the Conti Cup final in 2024. She scores in the gold medal match of the Olympics in 2016. She scores in the gold medal match of the Olympics in 2021. She scores in the I want to say 2027 Euros, but I can't find it. My Wikipedia scrolling is going to anyway.
That's too far. That's predictable in the future.
Exactly.
That's how many she scores.
2017.
In 2 years' time.
Exactly. She scores in the big moments, and I just there's something incredibly heartwarming and lovely about how much she hates the spotlight for someone that like gives herself the spotlight by stepping up in those big moments. She just looks so awkward. I saw a video yesterday in my multiple scrollings of and watchings of every single thing that exists in the world online at the moment, while she was speaking, like, and being interviewed at the like trophy lift thing yesterday. She sort of stood very straight with her arms very straight by her side, and then just next to her, Leah Williamson sort of laughing to the other players and is doing a little impression with her, like looking like a little penguin with her arms straight down by her side. And I was just like, she's just lovely. She's clearly like really, really lovely, and like, yeah, so incredibly humble. I just feel really happy for her, given like sort of the flack she's taken at various points. You know, to be able to do that on the biggest club stage is just brilliant.
Well, speaking of players who don't really like the spotlight, so to speak, Kim Little is champion of Europe, Tim. I mean, it's pretty good to say that out loud, bearing in mind, did she join the club a year after they became Champions League winners in 2007?
Yeah, absolutely. She's a real bridge in the history between those two teams. But as you say, she just kind of missed that first one. And I don't think there's even the most, understandably begrudging women's football fan of this success for Arsenal would begrudge Kim Little at all. And I think the respect she's always had within the game is very, very clear and very, very loud. I gave up years ago asking the question, who's the best trainer, because everyone just says Kim all the time, and her kind of professionalism. People like Hope Solo saying it's best player she's ever played with, which when you consider who Hope Solo has played with, that's high praise indeed. And it feels like, I think particularly because, she's played for an international team who are never going to challenge for the biggest honours, that's maybe, I say, affected her standing. It's probably just not quite given her the same spotlight. The fact that she has almost no digital footprint online, she just goes about her business very, very quietly. And, I said to someone yesterday, everyone deserves this, but she deserves it just a little bit more. And I loved Suzy asked Leah Williamson a question yesterday about, will you be starting the Kim Little Ballon d'Or campaign? And Leah said if it had ever been up to me, she'd have 4 already. Which I think says everything. And, she's got 1 year on her contract. I suspect that will probably be it. So she wasn't going to get too many more chances to get this. And it just feels right that Kim Little is a Champions League winner. Absolutely.
Yeah, it really does. I want to focus on Renee Slegers, though, Soph, because 8 months it's been since she took charge on an interim basis. 127 days after signing a permanent contract, she goes and does this. It's been an incredible journey for her. She's such a young coach still. How do you even go about describing what an achievement this is from her point of view?
Well, I don't think there's ever not been many quite like it, in terms of being able to take over in that kind of short space of time and do what she's done with a team that was so lacking in confidence when she took over. And the fact that, she was in the backroom staff as well. You kind of expect when big changes happen, you expect someone to come in from the outside and you get that, manager bounce and all of that kind of stuff. But the fact that she was within the setup and she's kind of, that journey over the last 8 months, I think she always talks about being humble. I think that really, really comes through in everything that she does. Even the fact that, she was in the sidelines, and I really, really rate this, by the way. She speaks to me in a lot of ways. She was on the sidelines in her T-shirt and shorts in the biggest day of her life, like she was just like one of the other staff. I think that is really just kind of epitomizes what she is about as a coach. She's very much one of them. It's about the team thing. She talks about, as I said, the humbleness. Every post-match of every round that I've been in, she's talking about needing to keep their feet on their ground and remain humble and not think too far ahead. And that's exactly how you, one step at a time. It's exactly how you get the kind of job done, I think. And she's really instilled a confidence in these players. You can tell they really love playing for her. You speak to, the likes of Leah, Beth, throughout the course of the season, and they all say how much they enjoy coming to work in the morning and enjoy playing under Renée Slegers. And it's a bit, crazy to think that this is only the start, really, of her career. She signed an 18-month contract in January, and I think the club would be absolutely bonkers if they don't this summer go down and make her sign a 5-year contract, put pen to paper, because she needs a long-term vision now. She's done exactly what she needed to do, I think, in terms of taking over. And it's now her squad to build and build around her image of what she wants Arsenal to play like in the future.
Yeah, I agree completely. We have talked about what Arsenal got right, Suzy, but what did Barcelona get wrong? I mean, they look pretty shell-shocked at the final whistle.
God, both Tim and Sophie have set me off, so that's a great start. The praise for Kim Little and Renee. Sophie's on the cusp of setting up a Renee Stan account for all of the footage of her coming out after and in the celebrations as well. Yeah, they did look flustered, particularly after, as Tim said earlier, they had Arsenal had weathered that first 20-minute spell really well, and sort of the first half as well. I thought it was so even in that first half, much less so in the second, but they did not look comfortable. Arsenal kept them sort of very central. They struggled to get the ball out wide. When they did, I mean, Katie McCabe and Caitlin Ford's efforts on Caroline Graham-Hansen were just absolutely superb. I was watching a compilation of McCabe and Hansen's battle earlier, and she just doesn't miss a thing. And that was where they were, I think, going to really kind of punish Arsenal, was in those wide areas potentially, with Arsenal keeping that midfield so congested. But yeah, I think it was, I don't know whether they underestimated Arsenal or whether they were just a little bit shocked by the way Arsenal kind of came into that game and sort of was set up and the confidence in the side. But they just didn't really step out of second gear at all. I don't think they went up a level. Only Aitana Bonmati really was sort of at her best for them. But I don't want to say that in a sense that, oh, well, if they were all at their best, then they would have won, blah, blah, blah. Because it was Arsenal that stopped them from being at their best, right? You can't, one doesn't exist without the other. So, yeah, I just think they were very taken aback by how good Arsenal are. I mean, even Bonmati was really wonderful in the pre-match press conference when she was talking about Arsenal, how they deserved to be in this final, and that they've never scored 4+ past Lyon and things like that. But at the same time, the narrative was sort of all plucky little Arsenal, all the way through from everyone, really, and particularly the opponents. So I think maybe there was a little bit of underestimating there.
Yeah, it's difficult when everybody's bigging you up and you're the favourites and you've done it so many times before and you know that your opponents haven't had the greatest of seasons. It's really difficult not to kind of get into that slightly casual mindset, I suppose. Renee Slegers did allude to the fact that it could be a springboard for Arsenal's success. This is what she said. This means so much for everyone who's built towards this across many years, but it also means so much for the future because it motivates people, it motivates us, and it shows what we're capable of. Of course, if you're part of Arsenal, you go for trophies. That's what the club wants, and that is what we want as well. So what is this going to mean in terms of the wider impact for the club in the short and long term, Tim, do you think?
What I really hope this does, there's work to do in transfer market, as there always will be every summer, and Arsenal have a couple of areas of the squad where they're ageing out a little bit and need to get a little bit younger. But what I really hope this does, I've always maintained, usually in the face of opposition, I don't think there's a talent gap between Arsenal and Chelsea. I just don't think there is. But, what Suzy in particular was talking about earlier, it's that Arsenal's high level is a match for anyone, but it's that 70-80% level when you go away to Aston Villa, away to Brighton, maybe after a Champions League game, and Chelsea will just win completely forgettable 1-0 wins that no one will ever talk about or remember again, but they'll put the points on the board. That is what they've had over Arsenal for the last few years, and that's what I really want this to build for Arsenal, that belief, but also that kind of, no team is going to be able to play like Arsenal did, like in Lyon or against Barcelona. You can't play like that every week. It's what's your 70% level? What's your level when you rotate a couple of players, when you take a couple of players out? And for me, that's maybe more of a psychological thing, just having that mentality of grinding results out. That's what I want this to build, because what Arsenal have shown is that talent-wise, they are okay. They are completely okay. But they just need that consistent level, and I hope this builds a bit of belief. But what I really hope it builds as well is that the players go away and say, okay, not only have we not won the league in a few years, we haven't really competed for it. and let's go and let's give Chelsea a real shot next season and try and win the league title. That's what I hope.
They'll have gained some new supporters as well. I'm sure of it. At least 5,000 Arsenal fans travelled out to the final, took over Lisbon's famous Pink Street as well, and they've been a huge part of this journey, haven't they? Soph, what was the atmosphere like out in Lisbon?
It was incredible. I was with Suzy. We turned into Pink Street, and you could just hear the Arsenal fans before you could see them. And you just turned into Pink Street, and it's the street with the iconic coloured umbrellas at the top. And it was just this like wave of red and white everywhere, and singing and chanting. And I think this has been I'm so pleased for them, because they've been on the journey the whole way as well. The Arsenal supporters group have put in so much work to try and build a fan base, to connect with fan groups, in the countries that they've been in, whether it's been Oslo or Sweden or wherever they've travelled through the season. They get connected with the Arsenal fan groups in those cities, in those countries, and it's been a real effort. And I know there was a lot of effort going in to make Saturday really special for the travelling fans, and have those events and that gathering on, so that you could really get the kind of vibes going before the game. And I think Arsenal have shown the way in that respect, in terms of building fan bases, building a culture. We saw it yesterday as well. So I think it's very special for them. And I would like to shout out Farah as well, who is the head of the Arsenal supporters group. She puts in an awful lot of work to get that sorted, to get that done. And I don't think people really realise how much work it actually takes. So big kudos to her.
Sorry, I'd just add to that as well. The committee for the Arsenal Women's Supporters Club were invited to the celebrations to celebrate with the players up in the kind of Diamond Club after the parade yesterday, which I think was richly deserved, because stuff like taking over Pink Street and all of those bars, that doesn't just happen. They phone ahead. They do it every away game. They phone pubs ahead. They say, we're going to bring 100, 200 people. Can you kind of save an area for us? They do an awful lot of work to build that kind of social environment around games, which is so crucial, particularly in women's football, where so many fans might like women's football but don't work with people or have people in their family that like it. They've made a real effort to say, come on your own, and come to the meetup, and then you'll have friends to go with. They've worked really hard on that.
Yeah, that's really lovely, and lovely touch from the club as well. And those celebrations have been extensive, haven't they? Not just in Lisbon, back home as well, the after party and celebrations, as you mentioned there, Tim. Jess Glynn with an after party, iconic photos that I've seen across social media. Katie McCabe, finally a celebration as well at the Emirates, as we mentioned yesterday. And you were all there as well. What did you make of it?
I've gone again. All the supporters club stuff was so nice. It was fantastic. And what was lovely was, it's a bank holiday, Monday, it's half term. I did not have a babysitter or anyone to look after James, or a friend that he could go to. So Arsenal very kindly let me bring him with me. And it was just so great. I tweeted pictures to celebrate that moment with him there as well. Just really nice, especially when, and I've spent a lot of time reflecting on this in the past few days, thinking back to the time spent with my dad growing up watching Arsenal. It was just brilliant. And what I just couldn't get over was how similar it was to some of those big celebrations of old, like the FA Cup finals in the same place at the Armoury, not cup finals, cup winning celebrations. The obviously the parades were much bigger scale, because that's the nature of a parade, but the 98 double winners parade, the Invincibles parade, it was the same feeling. It did not feel like the little sister event or the Arsenal women event. It felt like an Arsenal event, and that was the thing that really got me in the throat and punched me in the gut all day. And afterwards was that feeling.
You've just had surgery,
yeah,
Suzy.
I know,
you
right?
need to take care.
Yeah, it was great. It was just so great.
I would say let's have a word for Katie McCabe, who is joining up with Ireland this morning. And I'm sure the physios and the strength and conditioning staff are going to have their work cut out. But knowing Katie McCabe, who, by the way, set a record for minutes played in a Champions League campaign this season, and once again, I think certainly in the top 2 for minutes played for Arsenal, which she is every single season, never injured. So No questioning of her professionalism at all. But it's fair to say she added some colour to proceedings, maybe some colour that Arsenal didn't entirely appreciate at all times, but I think Arsenal fans really did, and I think it was great to see the players' personalities as well, kind of so authentically. And yeah, some of the pictures in particular coming out just absolutely iconic, and I hope to see them as bronze statues outside that stadium one day.
I was just going to add, maybe from a wider perspective of the women's game, I've been to two events like that in my time. The Lionesses at Trafalgar Square, which was obviously huge after they won the Euros in 2022, and that event. And as far as I know, that domestically, that was the first time it's been done solely for a women's team. I know, other teams have joined on the buses of men's parades and stuff like that. But I think exclusively for a women's team, that was the first event, at least in the last 10 years, where it's happened with the focus on the women's team's achievements. And I think that is a really iconic moment in terms of the growth of this game. I hope we see many more of it. We've seen it with Barcelona when they win things. They have the same thing when they go back to Barcelona and party. So I hope this is the start of many. It has to happen. We shouldn't always be in the shadow of the men's game. I think we've now reached a point where all of these achievements should be starting to be celebrated, and it was very, very special looking out across that crowd. It really reminded me of. I mean, I've been in this game 13 years. It really reminded me of how far we've come in that time.
We have come a very long way. We also have received an email, just to wrap this up, from Jim Hearson. We've probably answered most of his questions already, but there's just three extra ones that I'm just going to throw in. He says, so many questions after Arsenal's fantastic Champions League triumph. How amazing was Leah Williamson? How did Suzy feel on the day, and how is she now? I think we've covered that one. And how many pasta di nata did she consume? And where's my gluten-free one? This should be added on the bottom.
Oh, Leah was so good. I was watching a compilation video of her as well, and there was one point where I turned to Sophie in the game after a particularly incredible tackle in the box. The calmness on the ball, where I was screaming boot it and she didn't, and she just does this, so calm, just to pull the ball away from the feet, I think, of Bonmati, and then just kind of, shift it. And I said to Sophie, I'm about to throw my wedding ring onto the pitch, get down on my knees and propose to Leah. It was just, that moment was just that brilliant. I haven't told my husband that, probably should keep it quiet. He listens to the pod. That's a bit of a disaster. How did I feel on the day, and how am I now? I don't want it to end. Like Tim was saying at the start, I just don't want it to be over. I want to bask in this weekend and this feeling for as long as humanly possible. And that's why I spent the absurd amount of money on one of those next season shirts with the 25 and champions on in gold for James, which he will not appreciate as much as I would, but I could not bring myself to afford two of them. But I don't know. I don't even know how I feel anymore. Pastel de natas, I had one a day, except on the last day where I had at least two, but then there were some mini ones at various events that I also ate, so it ended up being quite a lot. And then I had two at the airport, so actually it was more than one a day by quite some way, but I tried to not keep count. It was too high risk.
A big shout out though to Johnny Liu, who at half-time came up with handfuls of pasta de natas and was like, we can't get it through the second half without them, so he kept us all fueled throughout.
Well, all I can say is, we've waxed lyrical about Arsenal for the last half an hour or so, and all I can think is you did not bring me back a gluten-free pasta de nata. That's the only thing.
I don't think they exist.
Maybe not, but you could have found one and made one and found a chef that might make. No, I'm joking. I think there's more important things than that. I can't even have them, to be honest, because I can't have the butter. They'd have to be a vegan and gluten-free, which I think they'd definitely do not exist.
Or taste very good.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's probably the main point. Tim, we're letting you go after another emotional pod for you. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the celebrations. I reckon you can keep going for another few weeks or so.
I think so. Although I'm going to spend the day with my daughter today, so that might not bring me back down to earth, but get me out of this little bubble. But no, it's always a pleasure. But this one was just a little bit more of a pleasure. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful, Tim Stillman. Right, that's it for part one. In part two, we'll talk to World Sevens Football's head of football, Adrian Jacob, after the inaugural tournament took place in Portugal last week. Welcome back to part two of the Guardian Women's Football Weekly. There was yet more history made in Portugal. It was the place to be, wasn't it, last week? The first ever World Sevens football tournament took place in Estoril after 3 days of matches, and the now infamous creative walk-ons. Bayern Munich beat Manchester United in the final to claim the trophy and take home the top prize of $2.5 million. There was loads of intrigue around the tournament, with it being a completely new concept. So, to demystify it a little bit, we thought we'd get on World 7 Football's Adrian Jacob, formerly of Chelsea. You'll recognise his name, to find out how it all went. How are you, Adrian? You all right?
Yeah, very good. Really good. Tired, emotionally exhausted, but in one piece, just.
Well, you're on the right pod for that, because we've just gone through the Arsenal-Barcelona Champions League final. So tired and emotional is the name of this pod today, for sure. Congratulations. It seemed from the outside to be a really successful first tournament. How do you reflect on it, apart from being absolutely knackered?
Do you know what? I think we've not actually had a full debrief yet. We've, a lot of people left on, I think, Sunday. I got back late last night. I think the overriding feeling is we just had a lot of fun. When this idea came about, at the end of the day, you think, okay, we can put this in place, we can do this. And then once things get started, it sort of took on a whole life of its own. It just seemed like a bit of a throwback, if anything, that, we talk about football in so many different ways, and you speak to players and you see how players react. And we had, one of the important things, I suppose, for us, and we kept using this line about it being player-centric. And I think what the amazing thing was the players just completely embraced it. And I've spoken to quite a few members of the team, and we've literally all been there just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And I think for me, pretty much every post, whether it's by a player or by a club or by someone who went, the word fun is in there. And I think that's the overriding thing of everything, really.
Yeah, I was watching it from home. Obviously, we had Tom Gary out there, and I was shocked at how much I enjoyed it. I believed in the idea of it. I believed in the concept, but I just did not expect to just sort of fall into love with it that fast. Obviously, in April, you announced that you were leaving Chelsea after 11 years to take on this role. I mean, that's a big leap to take. What was it that attracted you to the project in the first place and the concept of it?
So, I think that's first of all, I think the way that you've asked the question, it wasn't about leaving Chelsea, it was about doing something different. When I spoke to the people involved and they told me the idea, I just thought, do you know what, it sounds something really, really different. I think I was just really enthused by all the different aspects of it and doing something completely left field. And seeing what we could do and seeing where we could take this and obviously it really is a startup and we didn't have a great deal of time, and seeing what sort of impact we could make with this, and seeing just how we could do something different as opposed to, the same things over and over again. And actually the excitement of everyone involved and the passion of everyone involved just sold the idea to me completely.
I was there on Friday, and I had an incredible time. And I think it really did strike me. This game is so serious a lot of the time, and the kind of the fact that it was so fun, the fact that you saw the technical side of the players, and they could really express themselves on the pitch was really important. And I've actually never seen or spoken to so many happy players in the mixed zone, or like so many open and willing to give their time. You could really see how the energy was there. Did you have any discussions with the teams and the players beforehand about that, or is it just completely organic?
I've not seen my family for 3 months. None of us have seen our families for 3 months. We have people working all over the world, so time zones went out of the window. So it was normally sort of working from 7 a.m. till midnight. So we went really we had so many really granular meetings and covered absolutely everything. But one of the things we really did was make sure there was nothing on the players, and that actually, look, I went to the clubs and brought the clubs on board, and it was very much, just enjoy yourselves. I think the noise from outside was very, very much about the prize money, which, yes, is hugely important. But it was also just an opportunity where we weren't asking the players for anything. We literally just said, look, enjoy yourselves. Have a great time. You're in an amazing location. And I think this is, one of the things I really have to, there are lots and lots of things I'm very grateful for my time at Chelsea for. But I also know the standards that Chelsea have when we go away. So I knew that we had to have minimum of those standards. And so we created, I suppose, the stage, and then said, just do what you want. Just have fun. There's no, we're not pulling you for activations. We're not pulling you for comments. We're not pulling you, I think one of my favourite things about it, and first of all, everyone was so relaxed. Everyone was just, and on the day of the final, the United players were on the beach eating ice cream. And I just absolutely loved that. I just, they were all really chilled and just enjoying it.
That's like a player's dream, that is. What, no activations? We don't have to be somewhere at a certain time. They were absolutely, literally on the beach.
Yeah.
Having brought all the clubs on board, with that in mind, how pleased were you with the buy-in? Bearing in mind it was such a blank sheet of paper, effectively.
Yeah, I mean, that went way more than we thought. And, I think the great thing is you can't create that. And you can't say, okay, I want you to do this, I want you to do that. As I said, I think we built the stage and then just let them do what they want. And, we tweaked quite a few things during the tournament. The refs, for example, the refs were amazing. I don't know if you've seen the clip of the refs dancing before a game and things like that. And yet again, with the refs, we weren't like, you have to do this, you have to do that. We took their feedback. Honestly, everything was about not you're on holiday, do what you want, but very much seriously, just enjoy yourselves, play football. We know it's not the Champions League. We know it's not the league. Just have a good time. You have everything literally catered for you. Go for it.
Football's supposed to be fun, right? That's what it's for.
I know, we do forget it, Suzy.
We do.
We really do.
What were your biggest learnings from the first edition? I imagine there were many and many things that you're like looking at for the next ones of what you want to kind of tighten up on, or things that you think you did really well, etc.
As I said, we've not had the full debrief yet. The one thing that I really, really liked, which I was quite adamant about before when we invited clubs, was the spread of clubs and different clubs from different nations and not having too many from one nation. I think we can make it faster. I think the penalty spot was too close. As I said, during the tournament, we tweaked quite a few things. So during, the first couple of games, we didn't have music. We had a bit of music, but the music was sort of like corners and stuff like that. And the guy who's in charge at the stadium, Greg, who's just brilliant, has worked for the Knicks at Madison Square Garden. I was always sort of like quite, okay, we're English, we're not making it too gimmicky, stop being so bloody American, okay? And then he turned around to me after the third game, after the second game, and said, can we put some music on while we're playing? And I was like, yeah, go for it, but keep it quite quiet because I don't want the players to get distracted. I don't want it to become another thing. And after the third game, I think buyin played the third game. And I was speaking to Camilla afterwards. And I said, what did you think about the music? She just said, yeah, fine. I didn't even notice it. So like, okay, fine. So it then became, make it louder. And then the last morning, I went to Greg in his little box thing. And I just said, right, okay, I want you to go full on Madison Square Garden. and he turned around to me and he goes, I've been waiting for this. So I was like, pump it up, especially at the last minute, make it ridiculous. And I was like, and if we go into extra time, I was like, I don't want to hear myself think. So it was just like literally in the end, I was like, I think all of us, we were just embracing the madness and embracing the ridiculousness of it all, but just the fun and doing different things, and not realizing that we didn't have to do things in a certain way. So there will be lots of things lots of tweaks. So yeah, but what they are yet, we've got. To be honest, my brain has been going in every which direction about. And also, one of the things is, I know a lot of the guys who are back have supposedly spent the last couple of days just watching DAZN and watching YouTube and just rewatching everything. So I've not watched anything yet. So I don't know. It's the honest answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fun, I really enjoyed the music too. And I don't think I would have ever done the YMCA in a press box before, but me and Charlotte Harper were going not sure it was technically allowed, but we were like, to hell with it. But no, it was also one learning, I think, sell more hoodies, because I really, really wanted the one that you're wearing and there weren't enough. Yeah, the merch was brilliant.
You know what? So, yeah, again, we had so many conversations about the merch, and I'm getting involved in conversations about the merch, which isn't my thing. And I'm like, seriously? Every time I had to buy a new suitcase yesterday.
It was so good. And in terms of maybe the skepticism that maybe came, intrigue, I think with everything that is new, there's always skepticism and intrigue about it when it's an entirely new concept. We know there's a loading issue in the game, so that was one of the topics that came up. And there is a focus on European teams in this tournament, and that was another maybe slight criticism that came out. How are you approaching some of those opinions?
Yeah, again, we're speaking to players, and we've been speaking to clubs. I'll be very, very honest. When someone went down, every time we're like, oh God, be okay. Don't be injured. But I think, speaking to players actually, and I think one of the things that I thought yesterday, and, touch wood, everyone is absolutely fine. What was also really interesting is when a player went down, they got straight back up because they realised the game was carrying on. So it wasn't even a case of, I just need some spray, whatever. They were literally straight up every time. And we were just like, this is hilarious. But I think what was, and I am no expert on this whatsoever, but I think quite a lot of injuries come when you're stressed, especially with women players, that when you're stressed, your muscles work slightly differently. There was zero stress. And I think that really helps. I think the coaches were learning as they went along as well, especially with substitutions. So we were we saw a few times the players looked like they were a bit, not tired, but you thought, okay, in fact, I'll run this off. You don't need to run it off, just get off, and if, we had 16 games, I've got my calculator next to me, but that's a decent amount of football. The loading is as light as we thought it would be. The players were turning around and saying, you know what, we do more than this in training. The data guys who I've spoken to since have said it was basically pretty much like a light training session for them. So they kept it up, and so I think on that side, actually, it's worked.
Yeah, and actually that player element is really core in that, isn't it? And, you've got a player advisory council with the likes of Anita Asante, Laura George and Tobin Heath on board. How much have they helped steer things?
Do you know what? The five of them are, in their own ways, absolutely nuts. They are brilliant in so many different ways, and they offer so many different perspectives because they are five completely different personalities and with five completely different skill sets. Yet again, we've just said to them, you tell us. If you think we're doing something wrong, tell us what it is. If you think that we should be doing this instead, you tell us. As I said, we have this idea of being player-centric. In this edition, we've achieved that because we've had the knowledge of what the players want and what they don't want. We also know we can tweak things and we don't have to wait for it to go through a ridiculous committee. So I don't know if you guys saw the yellow card when Tuva took her top off, and we were watching that, and it was obviously because that's what we do. We were watching games. Who knew it? And I was sat with Tobin, Neitz, and Kelly, and as she took her top off, we were like, "Oh, she's going to be booked for this." And then we just went, and then I think I just went, No, we're not having this. We're rescinding that.
Literally making the rules up as you go along.
Yeah, because we can. So it was just like, you know what, it's fun. We just because that's how it works, we don't. And then, we spoke to Minka, the referee, and she was like, God, yeah, brilliant. And so they did this video of Minka receiving the yellow card back. But yeah, again, that was something really spontaneous. And I think that created the fun as well, that, basically the players came to have fun and party. So that was, yeah.
There's also been a bit of an emphasis on the social impact you want to make in the places you go and things like that. What can you tell us about that?
Okay, so the social impact was headed up by Will, who's got an amazing track record of bringing in certain programs to countries. What was really, really important to us, and, of all the ambassadors, I've got to tip my hat completely to Laura George. Laura is an incredible human being and so passionate about growing the game and so passionate about social impact. And, I think this was my 7th visit to Estoril in the last 2 or 3 months. But what we really didn't want to do is just go there, have 3 days worth of fun, and then leave. We want, when we had these amazing clubs, when we had these amazing ambassadors in town, we wanted to give something back. And we wanted to have these coaching clinics with Laura, with Tobin, with Kelly, with Neitz. I mean, Neitz off the scale, honestly, with Sager, and just so they could have, the girls could have something to aspire to. So they had a list of different charities and different projects. They decided which ones were best between them. Did an amazing coaching clinic on the Thursday, I think it was, for 2 hours. And then, sorry, Soph, but they all got loads of merch.
So I know who to come to for a hoodie, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll tap you up later. Finally, Adrian, what's next for World Sevens football?
The next edition. I think, we'll start on it pretty much straight away. I don't think there's any secret in, not the exact location, but where we're looking to do it. But I think also start looking for next year as well, because I'm not doing this in 3 months again.
Yeah, you need to get some well-earned rest, Adrian. It's been lovely having you on and hearing a little bit more about it. It's very much looking forward to the next edition. Thanks so much for being on the pod with us.
No, thanks, guys. Great to speak to you.
Brilliant. I feel like a Guardian Women's Football Weekly road trip is on the cards for the next one. That's for sure. Right, I just want to finish off with an email that we got last week, but it was just too late for last week's pod. It's a long one, but bear with me. It's worth it. Hello, Faye, Suzy, Sophie and Tom. Along with the 74,000 football fans who bought tickets and went to Wembley on Sunday, I enjoyed the spectacle and lively atmosphere, even if the game itself never quite lived up to either. Talking about the FA Cup final, of course. Fair play to Chelsea for their incredible achievements this season, even though it feels they're unrivalled pragmatists rather than entertainers. But it wins games and trophies, and who can't admire Millie Bright? It's amazing to see how the game has grown in the last 6 years since my daughter Hebe, this is Ian from Aylesbury, by the way, who's messaged us before. Hebe and I have become regular match goers. We are Arsenal season ticket holders, so this may have coloured my pragmatist's comment. And this was also sent before Saturday. We'll take a win over artistry and entertainment this weekend. You got a bit of both. Participation, attendances and media coverage has grown, whilst the culture around the women's game has remained largely intact. And this season has seen the first cracks appear because of the wider exposure, with unrealistic demands on players by fans and the abusive social media the likes of Bunny and Chloe received. As you've often discussed on the pod, we need to be careful how the game grows and what we risk losing as it does, which leads me to the halftime BBC interview with Reddit co-founder Alexis Ohanian, husband of Serena Williams, who bought a 10% stake in Chelsea for £20 million last week. Thank you to Tom Gary in The Guardian. Just a reminder of what he said. These are the queens of global soccer, and they've got the trophy case to prove it, so I feel so humbled. The sky's the limit, and what I love about this club is the club is unapologetically ambitious, and this will be a billion-dollar franchise one day. Is this the way we want women's football to grow? Ian says. Yes, investment is absolutely needed to grow the game, but it's talk of club franchises where we want to go. Anecdotally, Hebe, basically, the response has been, that's not what we want. I'd be interested to know the pod's thoughts. A utopian investment that keeps the game's integrity without becoming a clone of men's football seems unlikely. So what is the answer? What can we do as supporters to keep the game we love intact while still growing it? Thanks, Ian from Aylesbury. P.S. I love listening to the pod and have a huge respect for the way you reflect the culture of the game. Knowledgeable, passionate, informed and friendly. Better luck with the predictions in the future, though. One of the best things about there being a summer tournament this year is we'll get to hear you talking football and keeping us company sooner than usual. Brilliant email. Thank you so much, Ian. Who wants to take that?
I can jump in. It's a really great question and a really complicated question because, as you know, someone who is a very left wing, I am uncomfortable with like sort of private equity investment within the women's game, and the precedent that sets. You know, obviously, the men's game was born and grew in a very different way. And, you know, that's not something we've necessarily seen in the women's as much because they're connected to fans, to men's teams primarily that do have now these sort of major financial backers and owners that often suck more money out of the club than they put in the long term. And I'm not a fan of that. But, you know, when we're looking at, you know, those that do come into the game, I think there is a difference between, say, you know, Saudi investment in Newcastle, or, you know, if we're talking Arsenal, you know, the Kroenke's investment in an ownership, I would say less an investment of Arsenal, etc., the Glazers of Man United, versus someone like Alexis Ohanian, who's come in just with what seems to be, and he's got, you know, a pretty good track record to prove it, a genuine love of women's sport, belief in it, belief in its growth and desire to invest in it. Now, you know, does it make me totally comfortable? No, not at all. Do I have to be slightly realistic about the where the game is, where it's going and where investment is going to come from? Perhaps. But, you know, ultimately I'd like to see women's clubs be done very differently, rooted in their communities, you know, a mass sort of movement to have them be sort of fan owned, fan run, and, you know, not just fan player as well. And yeah, with a sort of completely different and more holistic way of looking at the growth of the game and what it could do as a sport. But, you know, I do think there is a little bit of a difference between the types of investment that is coming in at the moment, which, you know, it's not the worst thing in the world, is it? Right? Like someone like him and Serena Williams coming in and doing what they've done for Chelsea and Angel City. I'm not going to criticise that I think well-meaning people, putting their money where their mouth is a good thing to a certain extent. But yeah, I think in terms of how we move away from the sort of that kind of model of the game, it needs basically a mass movement, I would say, led by like the FSA and fans groups and things like that. And that's not necessarily a sizable body or movement or feeling at this stage. Can it get there? I think when friction comes, that's when those things can change.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. And thank you very much, Ian, as well, and to Hebe for sending us that email. You can have your say as well. Just send in your questions via social media or email us at womensfootballweekly@theguardian.com. And as ever, a reminder to sign up for our weekly women's football newsletter. All you need to do is search Moving the Goalposts, sign up. Soph, it's been a pleasure.
Been brilliant. Thanks for having me.
Go get some rest. Suzy, just keep those celebrations rocking on.
I'm going to go and scroll TikTok, Instagram, X, Blue Sky, and maybe rewatch the match entirely. We'll see.
Of course. Well, why wouldn't you do that? Right, the Guardian Women's Football Weekly is produced by Sophie Downey and Silas Gray. Music composition was by Laura Iredale. Our executive producer is Sal Armat.
This is The Guardian.